Our speaker today is Bobette Nelson. She is with the Norfolk Bureau of Cemetery Cultural Resource Management and also Executive Director of the Norfolk Society for Cemetery Conservation. And if you think I could memorize that one, you are so wrong. Bobette.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. I apologize. I thought that I was supposed to be here at 8 to set up, but it should have been 7:30. So sorry about all the stuff going on with everybody up here talking. As she said, my name is Bobette Nelson. I'm with the Norfolk Bureau of Cemeteries, Cultural Resource Manager, and I'm also the Executive Director of the Norfolk Society for Cemetery Conservation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I have 15 minutes, so we're going to go through this quickly. Okay, these are just some photos of Elmwood Cemetery, just to give you an idea of the context of what we're talking about. How many of you here have been to Elmwood Cemetery off Princess Anne Road in Norfolk? Great. How many of you have someone interred in one of our 8 municipal cemeteries, a friend, a family member? Quite a few of you. Okay, next photo. So first we'll start with Cedar Grove. That was our first cemetery. It was established in 1825 when the St. Paul's when the St. Paul's Churchyard Cemetery was full and they were starting to have some hygiene problems. That's how the city got into the cemetery business. A lot of people always ask that. Why would you ever get into it as a municipality? That's why. So it was this, oh, sorry, let me go back, sorry. We include the numbers of interments in with Elmwood Cemetery, and it's around 35,000. This was our first municipal burial ground. We've got lots of Civil War soldiers and sailors, so there's a ton of history there. We also have mass yellow fever burials there from the yellow fever outbreak, several of those as you're well aware. And we got Elmwood placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2014. I'm sorry, that's Cedar Grove. Okay, so then this is more shots of Cedar Grove. Next. Elmwood Cemetery is also at, across the street from Cedar Grove, because when Cedar Grove was sold out, they had to build another cemetery because there still weren't any private cemetery companies around and to do that for them. So it was established in 1853. It's 43 acres large. It's a Victorian rural park cemetery, which means that it has kind of meandering paths, lots of landscaping, just a really gorgeous place, very different from our grid-like flat marker modern cemeteries that we have now. We have different types of architecture there, Greek Revival, Gothic, Exotic Revival, you name it, it's there. And we have lots of Norfolk's founding fathers, more Civil War soldiers and sailors, and it was placed on the National Register in 2013. And that is the Corps Mausoleum on the left, and on the right is the Cooper Angel. You'll have to come take a tour of the cemetery for me to get down in the weeds on what those are. This is more of our sites. The Lakeys Mausoleum is on the upper left. The one in the center here is a vase that was stolen actually in 2011. We got it back, but most of the stuff was cut up. That was from the Lakeys. It was fashioned by William Cooper, who's a very popular public artist who has things all across the United States, and William rests with us as well. On the far right is a tree of life, another symbol from the Victorian era with the bark peeled away, the very essence of life, so that the tree would eventually fail. As you know, bark gives life to trees. So anyway, down in the left, that's a big overview of Elmwood, and on the right is just another mausoleum door. We had lots of children in Elmwood for obvious reasons, and we have, the little Willie Stewart here on the right is actually sculpted to his exact likeness down to the buttons on his little shoes, and there is a wonderful story behind that as well. We have, sleeping children, looking down upon their own graves, and we have mourning figures that are also children. West Point Cemetery is at the corner of the West Point of Elmwood Cemetery. There was a potter's field on Cumberland Street from 1827 to 1873 where African American residents were interred. When Councilman Fuller, the first African American councilman for the city of Norfolk, came to council, he said, we've got to have our own burial place. This is ridiculous, we're in the potter's field. So they said, okay, we'll give you 7 acres, and we've got about 3,500 interments there. They named it West Point in 1883. The really cool thing about West Point is it has 58 Afro-Union soldiers interred in it behind what we call the the Afro-Union Soldiers Memorial. And that was the first memorial of its type that was erected south of the Mason-Dixon line following the Civil War. It was placed on the National Register in 2007. And this is the memorial here, and there's their angel, and then there's the 58 Afro-Union soldiers. Calvary Cemetery is at 1600 St. Julian Avenue. It was established when West Point was sold out because they realized they still needed a place to inter African American citizens, and at that time we couldn't all be buried together. So they established it in 1877 at 68 acres large. We have 38,000 interments there. Very likely many more. Unfortunately, the records were kept shoddily, to say the least. That's where my office is, so very familiar with them. And I would estimate that we have 55,000 folks buried there, many of which we have no record of. The repository of Norfolk's African American history from 1877 to the mid-70s, because even though the cemeteries were desegregated before that, no one was really interred in them until the mid-70s, no African Americans in the white cemeteries. Hundreds of recently discovered unrecorded interments thanks to some volunteer efforts and lots of obituary work. A lot of stuff through the society has gotten us a lot of folks that we didn't even know were there. Upper left is just an overview of Calvary Cemetery. On the right is a gentleman from Williams Funeral Home. That's right, Williams Smith Williams, that's it. And they have one of the few horse-drawn hearse in the area, and a lady who passed away decided she wanted a horse-drawn hearse funeral, so he came in, and I thought that was really, really lovely. Entrance to the bottom right, and on the left is our Veterans Memorial Lot at Calvary. Forest Lawn Cemetery, 8100 Granby Street. This is the great big one most folks know about. It was established in 1906. 123 acres, 70,000 recorded interments. They have the most up-to-date record, certainly, because it's the newest, and we're still selling graves there. The Langley family burial ground is also there. They owned the land before the gentleman that the city bought it from. And we have 70 species of trees there, so we do tours of trees to get folks in to see how beautiful the cemetery is and hopefully try to help us save it, because we have our hands full right now with all the other older cemeteries. When Forest Lawn gets really old, we're really going to be in need of community assistance. There is a community mausoleum there that is extraordinary. It's an Art Deco mausoleum. Go on to the next one. And it has a Frank Lloyd Wright skylight. In the top, it's all made of Alabama marble, gorgeous Art Deco design if you go inside. Up on the upper left is our Seamen and Sailors lot, purchased by the Seamen's Friends Society, where they interred all sailors and seamen from all over the world, so that they would have a Christian burial no matter why they died here or where they died. If they died in Norfolk, that's where they got buried. And that's just some of our beautiful trees for the fall tour trees. Magnolia is on Lancaster Street and Berkeley Avenue, established in 1860. The city purchased it in 1911. It's 9 acres large. It's in the Berkeley section of Norfolk, and lots of Norfolk's founding fathers are there, obviously the Berkeleys. Although Berkeley is a National Historic District, there were some indigent burials that the city did that kind of messed up the historic landscape integrity, and so we won't be able to put this on the National Register, but it's still a wonderful place. Almost 4,000 burials there. These are just photos of it. We would love to save that fence on the top right. Don't get a lot of those still intact, or that haven't been stolen. And then over on the left, just an overview of the monuments. Hebrew Cemetery, 1200 Tidewater Drop, established in 1850. The city purchased it in 1957. It's 4 acres large with a little over 1,000 interments. There are still spaces available there for interment, but most of our Jewish population wants to be interred at Forest Lawn, which is understandable. The cool thing about Hebrew is it shows you the foundation of our Jewish community with folks from Holland, France, and Germany, and lots of Russians after the outbreak of the pogroms in the 1880s. So there's the Cyrillic alphabet, and it's always fascinating to take a tour of Hebrew. And those are just some shots of the Hebrew Cemetery. Riverside Memorial Park is our most modern cemetery, established in 1910. City purchased it in 1971. It is very, it's very industrial. It's a kind of an industrial background at Riverside, and we'll see, there we go. See the cranes in the background, which I actually love. The brochure that's on your table that goes over all 8 of our cemeteries talks a little more about the industrial aspect of it, because that really is Norfolk. There is a tugboat captain interred there, Captain Smith, who was apparently a very, very well-respected tugboat captain, and it's fabulous because right now there's this broken down tugboat right on the water, and here's his big monument, and it's just perfect. It's just absolutely fabulous. And so that's Riverside, our future planning for Riverside, because as you know, once cemeteries are full, there's not much you do with them but maintain them. But through the mayor's plan to add more of a tree canopy to the city, we were able to get several different types of trees, different species of trees that we've planted there that we hope when they grow to maturity, we'll have kind of a natural arboretum going there, because it gets, you know, some pretty good water from the being so close to the marsh and such. So fingers crossed. All right, so what do I do? This is community engagement, and I have to say I've never only been given 15 minutes, so I'm so sorry. What we're trying to do is get people into our cemeteries because they're falling apart and we need help keeping them up. And we do that through, you know, twilight tours, notables tours, the Cemeteryscape photo contest. We have a 5K, we do a bike event, tours of trees. I give a lot of different courses and have developed coursework for you know, school-age children up through middle school to come in and do math and science and you know, art and fabulous stuff, but we only get the private schools, unfortunately, right now. Volunteer conservation program, and then in December we'll go live with a web cemeteries online interment database so that folks can look their stuff up online. What about the city? Everybody always asks that. These are city cemeteries. Why aren't they taking care of my monument? Well, because it's your monument. It's not their monument. And they have an endowment, and they are paid to mow the grass and keep up with the landscaping. Once you have passed away, now certainly if you go to the cemetery office, you say, my monument's messed up. My boss is going to jump through hoops to get that monument fixed for you because that's his job. What happens when you're not there anymore? Or you've passed away, or your family's moved away, and your monument falls? I'll tell you what happens, nothing. So it goes under the ground or it gets broken to pieces, and we consider that disrespectful and rude, and we also think that that is some extraordinary memorial art that deserves to be preserved, because we will never, ever bury people like this again, ever. So we should keep and preserve what we have. Huge budget cuts. The city's not into it. Lots of, they've taken a lot of staff and groundskeepers. I am grateful to have my job. Perpetual care fund started in the 60s. Cemeteries opened in 1825. You guys can do the math on that. 30% of grave sales go to the perpetual care fund. The cemeteries have not been self-sustaining for years. We get about $250,000 to $400,000 from the general fund. We are not a self-sustaining fund, so we don't bring in enough revenue to pay our staff. So if you think that the city is going to give us money to fix things, that shows that that's wrong. They maintain the grounds only. Everything else considered personal property. Next, please. So that brings us to the Norfolk Society for Cemetery Conservation, and this is what we do. Everything. Clean monuments, fix monuments, take ivy off of the tombs so that they don't continue to fall in. Get the fire department out there to take care of the United Fire Company lot there on the upper left. We had the Mormons come out and help us dig out some adult cradles, adult Victorian cradles, of which we've lost way too many. We have our own volunteers on the right there who do tons of work every week on Thursday. We have Norfolk Collegiate, love those kids, they're amazing. And then all of our other volunteers, everything from landscaping to putting stuff back together. Next, please. This is one of our memorial art conservation workshops that we have at Forest Lawn Cemetery, where we bring in smaller memorial art that volunteers can help us fix. And they come in for a few hours and help us fix it, and then we put it back out the next weekend. Next, please. These are baby Victorian cradles. Again, very rare to have them intact, or even have all the pieces there, but we managed to put those back together at Magnolia Cemetery. Next, please. Our accomplishments, this is in your packet. We did 57 volunteer work days. We've done tons of labor, adding up to about $50,000 in labor savings. Lots of tours of trees, and this is called a CRM presentation, a cultural resource management presentation. And then we do, the tours, and we also do some that are just strictly historic presentations. Next, please. So, let's see. Don't ask for money, don't ask for volunteers. So, thank you.
We've got got plenty of time for questions.
Okay, great. Let's do that.
You know, with all the talk about rising seawater,
Yeah.
what kind of impact is that having on Norfolk Cemeteries?
Yeah, it's actually, you just said New Orleans, that's fabulous. So yeah, absolutely it affects our cemeteries. Fortunately, in 1973, they started requiring concrete vaults, which keep the coffins sealed inside a concrete vault, keeps them well under the ground. The older stuff, to be honest, is mostly disintegrated by now. A lot of things were pine caskets and things. The only way that we could actually tell if we have burials in a lot of spots would be to use ground penetrating radar. We can't afford it, it won't happen. So it's, you know, we're all good as far as water rising. We're okay. Yes, sir.
Vandalism.
Yes, lots of vandalism, lots of theft, and that is why we are working to get people to come into our cemeteries. Come take a walk, walk your dog, go for a run, ride your bike, read a book, have an event. No alcohol, but have an event. I mean, this is, you know, this is what we're doing. We're trying to get people in there. For so many years, everybody said, oh, respect the cemeteries. If you go to a cemetery, you got to visit somebody, otherwise you shouldn't be in there. Wrong. Because this is where we end up, with everything falling apart and everybody being afraid to go into these places. And so we have thieves that go in there with sawzalls and cut off, you know, mausoleum doors, take all kinds of bronze memorial work, take stained glass, you name it, they take it. And why? Because we're not there. So that's what we're trying to do. Yes, sir.
It's about 20 years ago, the couple of VFW boats got together and found that there was a cemetery in Berkeley that was totally covered with jungle.
Yeah, we call it Mount Olive.
Around the railroad track.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get the city involved, finally got the press involved, and a lot of people turned out, and we actually did in fact get it cleared. That was, since that was all private lots,
Yeah.
how many places do you find that are that way that are not under your registry, or not under the society's purview?
We have about 7 abandoned cemeteries in the city of Norfolk. All of them are African American cemeteries. The one that you speak of in particular is the Page Family Cemetery. The last burial was in 1974. Since then, it was overgrown. The Berkeley Southside Coalition got together with the city, had it cleared. We currently still cut the grass there. We do not maintain monuments there, nor does the society at this point, because we have the other 8 cemeteries. There are abandoned cemeteries. They are everywhere, and you know, all you can do is get your neighborhood and friends together if you have one in your neighborhood and work with them to take care of it.
What got people's attention was, like you mentioned, was a tombstone that was broken and a root grown across it.
Yeah.
And the inscription was, "To our beloved mother, gone but never forgotten."
Yes, it's quite telling, isn't it? Yeah, we get a lot of, you know, Mother Nature does not stop, and we love her, but she can be a terror to our cemeteries. But, you know, we continue to try to keep our cemeteries naturally beautiful, as well as maintaining the memorial art within them without getting rid of all the trees and the shrubs and things that make them so beautiful. Yes.
The cemetery at the corner of Granby and Church Street, is that a private Catholic cemetery?
That is, I'm sorry, Granby and Church.
Granby Mount Center, right there by the zoo.
This is zoo.
Oh, yes, that's St. Mary's. Yeah, St. Mary's, and that's owned by the Catholic Diocese, so that is not ours.
How many private cemeteries are there in Norfolk?
St. Mary's and Woodlawn. So you might know of any others. I mean, other than the ones that have been abandoned that you know, there's little churchyards that, you know, but as far as we know, you know, St. Mary's and Woodlawn. Yes.
How many Eagle projects have been done?
We love Eagle
Are you
Scouts.
the point of contact?
Yes, we love Eagle Scouts, and that's something else I wasn't able to get into. We've got 3 going on right now. We've had another 3 or 4. I'm certainly the initial point of contact, but John Dill, our amazing maintenance supervisor, is the one who takes these kids under his wing and really shows them how to get this stuff done. And he's the one who comes in on Saturdays in his own time and does the, you know, things with all the Boy Scouts. So. Yeah, I'm the initial, but then I'll turn them over to John and work with him as much as I can. Thank you. We love Eagle Scouts. So.
Over at West Point, I know several of the, back a few years ago, they relocated a bunch of the soldiers. Were they all relocated or just a portion?
I wasn't aware that we relocated from West Point Cemetery.
Yeah, about 10 years ago or so.
Afro-Union soldiers?
Yeah.
We relocated them? Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, HDLers did it.
HDL?
They were contracted to do it.
I would love to know more about that. Thank you. See, we learn something new every day. I know
work
that we
for
have, you work, okay, yeah. I know that we have 58 behind the memorial, but it's my understanding. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're talking about, okay, where the bus station is.
Right.
Okay, right. Remember when I talked earlier about the Cumberland Street, yes, exactly, the Potter's Field?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where they were disinterred from and then moved. And
Okay.
you know, I don't even know where they were moved from, but I do know that they did take some disinterments out of there before they put up the,
Yeah, they had
you know,
glass lids.
isn't that
You can still
fascinating?
see in
It's
everybody.
fascinating. Yeah, we do a memorial art tour and a memorial practices tour for the Victorian era, and y'all should come to that. It's really great. A lot of stuff like that. Thank you.
Last question.
We talk about the cemeteries filling up. England, thousands of years. What have they done to eliminate that problem?
That you rent them. In a lot of cases, you rent. Your family gets a lease on a plot or a space for 75 years, usually 75 years, and then they, roll them out, put them in a mass grave, and put in the next person. We really don't want to do that here. I don't foresee that ever happening here, frankly, especially with cremation on the rise and green burials and wonderful things like that. But our thing is, I'm not necessarily saying we love for people to be buried in ground. That's really everybody's personal choice. But what we already have are these amazing, beautiful places that we'll never have again. And so what I'm trying to do is get folks to help us to save them. Everything in the future is in the future, but we still have these things that are gorgeous and they're here now, so we want to take care of them. So thank you very much for your time.
Let's, before you run away, a new coffee mug, so you remember us. And on the back is our 4-way test, and it's all about how we operate as Rotarians and how everybody should live their life. So you keep that in mind as you have your morning coffee. And I have one more thing for you to do. You need to draw our winning lottery ticket.
All right. Kind of a sailor's hat. I love it. Okay. 271.
A lot of disappointed people. All right, got a winner. Thank you so much. Thanks, folks. We'll see you at ODU.